Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Perfectly Mentored. I'm your host, Jason Portnoy. My guest today, Elena Cardone. I mean, what an absolute crazy powerhouse of a woman here. I heard her speak at GrowthCon and my mind was just blown, and I knew right away I had to have her on the show. Elena, welcome to the show.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Well, I really appreciate you taking time out of your busy day to do this. For the listeners who don't know you or haven't been exposed to you, why don't you give a little bit of your background and how you got to where you are now, author of Build an Empire?
Well, I started off I grew up in New Orleans, and I moved to Los Angeles at 17 to sort of take up an acting career, and had moderate success. I mean, I paid for my own bills. I bought a house. I had a few cars. So in my mind, I thought I was successful. Then there was like the low times when I couldn't even afford a Starbucks. But then cut to, and I never wanted a relationship, which is ironic, because now I'm so like my whole entire purpose is to help other people in relationships and mine as well. But cut to, I marry Grant Cardone, who was a really successful businessman at the time. But then 2008 came and there was the economic collapse. I was pregnant with our first child, so I wasn't acting at the moment. And we were under a really ridiculously expensive lawsuit that, so we had a lot of challenges going on that we didn't know we could get through or survive. So I traded in my acting career, which was really a difficult decision for me. Coming from that world, I was very independent and didn't want to give up what I perceived as my identity or my income to support a man. But I came to the conclusion that if we actually unified and worked as a team and a couple, that we could actually create a lifestyle and what I call an empire, hence build an empire, to sustain ourselves and actually become more independent and not need anybody else to dictate whether I work or not work, I'm good enough, not good enough. So now on the other side of all of that, it proved to be a wise decision to trade up. And now I wrote this book, Build an Empire, for anyone else who's interested in amassing not only a fortune for themselves, but also mentally, physically, and spiritual wealth as well. And I want to fast track that person. So to eliminate all of those years of mistakes and not being on the same page and thinking that I had to be this independent person without the need of anyone else. Listen, I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're in a relationship or not. If you want to do this thing single, I don't care. You will have to, at some point, acknowledge that you need somebody else in order to really have an empire. No one does it alone. So whether it's a business partner, an ally, a friend, you're going to have somebody else to depend on to grow you and your product.
How do you define empire? Like, what does empire mean to you?
An empire is a sustained in abundance of wealth, of love, of commitment, of honor and integrity that has the products within it, whatever your products are, that can be exchanged into enough hands to fund itself and then grow and amass more people. That's an empire. Empires can sustain hits. They're not normal. They rise above normal in everything. It's about a level of greatness, the willingness to achieve that, to do whatever it takes to attain it. So to me, an empire is a mindset to get yourself to be the ultimate version or potential of your true self in order to give back to the world and make a difference for the better, and to think that you are big enough and you can do that and achieve that.
So if you're not entrepreneurial or you're not a business owner, should everyone be wanting to build an empire?
Yeah, I'm not entrepreneurial. I'm not. The only thing I've ever done entrepreneurial in my life was take a bet on Grant. He became that moment where I said, I'm going all in on this dude right here. But before that, I was an artist. I'm not really an entrepreneur. I help Grant a lot with being a sounding board for him and running the whole behind the scenes operations. But I don't know how to run a business. I don't know how to do what he does. I don't know how to do the negotiations and analyze certain data. So I don't consider myself an entrepreneurial spirit, except for the fact that that one time that changed my life forever, I went all in and it paid off. So technically that makes me an entrepreneur.
And probably you're one for one in great business decisions, no?
Yes, I am.
Well, what's the reaction you get from other women?
I have found an immense amount of support from so many women across the globe. It is astounding to me how powerful and empowering women have been toward me. So, and the older that I become, the more I love and appreciate the power of a woman and having them as allies in my empire. It's really powerful. Women are strong. I'm so proud to be a woman.
What about working so closely with a spouse, right? So a lot of people don't like that such like contained environment. What advice can you give to better that working relationship?
The advice I would give for that is that if you do work with your spouse, you have to get real and honest with who does what. I'm not good with finances and numbers and calculations. That's not my deal. Fortunately, Grant excels in that world. So we've delineated, even though we work together, we've delineated who does what. So it separates us from having to be the boss or to try to compete for that, that one-upsmanship, that domination that sometimes happens when you have a husband and a wife or two partners vying for power, especially if they're the alpha types. I always want to, have it my way. But when I know he does this and I do this and he does this, if he crosses over here, then I'm like, stay out of my turf. Like, I'm the general of that area. So it's very important that we've equally balanced, that I run my divisions in my departments and I make the executive decisions on my world. So he's not allowed to bypass me. I can consult him for information and vice versa. But at the end of the day, when I make my decision, he has to back me. At the end of the day, when he makes his decision about a business venture, maybe it was something I didn't want. At the end of the day, I'm standing behind him because I trust him. We have an immense amount of trust for each other and for what we do and what our roles are. So we're not stepping on each other's toes. We're constantly allowing each other to grow in our roles, and trusting that we'll get the job done.
It also looks like you and Grant have done an incredible job of making sure you guys stay on the same page.
Yeah.
And that's super important, I believe. So what tips do you have for people to, whether it's sit down once a week with your loved one or your spouse and go over and make sure you're all on the same page? What advice and tactical tips can you give to the listeners?
We're always discussing where we want to go and how we get there. We have these conversations all the time. We don't set parameters. I feel like a lot of people get off of the same page because they set parameters on, at this time it's our time and we can't do the phone. And so there's all these like weird rules. Well, Grant and I have made so many goals that are so unattainable and ridiculous and so huge that we don't have time to worry about little things like, oh, we can't be on the phone. Because if you have a goal to reach 7 billion people on the planet, you can't say, oh, this is my time when I'm trying to go for this goal. It's like, no, if you need to be on the phone and promote right now because we have to reach 7 billion people. And some people might look at that and say, well, that's ridiculous. You're never going to reach that goal. But what that kind of a goal does is it puts our attention on the important things. So we're not playing small games anymore and holding each other back. We're fully committed. So we're constantly like, when are we going to make it? When are we going to make it? How do we get there? We need to go in a global world. We're constantly creating in the marriage and creating in our goals and our purposes. How do we want to help? How can we make a difference? We're constantly challenging ourselves and pushing ourselves. And with that, then you're going to get your enemies. Enemies are great to get you a partner on the same page. I hate enemies, but they're really great because every time an enemy attacks us, it makes me fortify with Grant even stronger because now I have to protect him and us from the enemies. So those are just a couple of the things that come in. We meet, we talk about it, we set goals that are so big that we're constantly like striving for the same thing. And then we use our enemies to fortify ourselves.
But how do you condition yourself to not get bothered by the little things, whether it's, you prepared a meal for Grant and he didn't come home that night because he had to work, or who's doing the laundry, who's taking the kids or doing that. So many people fight over the dumbest little things when trying to build something bigger.
It drives me insane. And we still have to fight that avid craving to be normal within ourselves. So it doesn't go away. We do the tit for tat stuff all the time. It's just one of us has to make a decision to rise above it. And so I can be really irritated and he can be really irritated about something so stupid, like what you just said about the dinner. Like he'll come home and he doesn't tell me when he's going to come home and he's starving and he's like, how come there's no food or, ready? I'm like, hello, a phone call. Like, okay, I look, I don't mind like helping you out here, getting you a meal. You should be appreciative. Like all that stuff runs through my head, and sometimes I might have the tendency to just like want to spout back. But then I realize, look, guy's just been at work all day. I know he's fighting the wars. I know he's doing the negotiations. He's doing all the hard stuff that nobody else wants to do. And he's doing it well. He's hungry. And every time he gets hungry, he just turns into a little bit of an a-hole. So I know this about him. I'm not going to take it personally because we have these big goals. I want 7 billion people to know who we are. I want to travel the world. I want him to get on the Forbes list, not because I need a status or I need a jet, but because he's a big dude that has a big purpose and I want to see him in the hands of people. I want to see that for him. So when those little things come in, yes, they never not irritate me. But if you have your goals so big enough, it pops you out because you can't get to where you want to go and lose your attention over this stuff when it needs to be there. I'm running out of time. Grant's running out of time. I don't know if we're going to pull this thing off. I certainly can't be worried about a meal.
What would you say then to the listeners to sit there and say, yeah, look, easy for Elena to say, she has a husband that's worth this amount of money. And if my husband brought in this amount of money too, I wouldn't get mad at him not doing the chores or doing things like that. No,
that's not true. You say that because you're not on the other side. I've had both. I've had no money and I've had money. The human experience doesn't change. You don't change just because you have money. Money is a reward and money is a trophy. And I love to have the trophies because they're a stamp on they're a Super Bowl ring. I won a ring. Like the plane, it's a reward, right? But it doesn't sit there forever. It's not like this constant, like, oh, I have money, I can relax about everything. No, I have like a lot of other different problems. I've traded in old problems for new problems, but I'm a human being. I get hurt the same way. I'm very sensitive. I don't like attacks. I don't like people attacking me. I don't like people pointing out my flaws. And that's not going to change whether I have $1 billion in the bank account or $10 in the bank account. I'm still not going to like those things. Money doesn't, money alleviates and gives you financial freedoms and it allows you to really enjoy the things that you want to enjoy in life. But money doesn't fulfill you. You have to fulfill you.
Well, I've heard the best saying is money doesn't change you. It actually just makes you more of who you already are. So if you're a fulfilled, happy person.
That's what Sarah Blakely said.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really liked when she said that. It magnifies who you are. So if you're a generous person, I can be more generous. And I have been. And if you're, a wiener. You're going to be a beer.
You can swear on this podcast, by the way.
I'm getting like Grant all of a sudden.
You and Grant, you just said something about, fighting the urge to have normal tendencies. One thing that I truly respect about you and Grant is that you pretty much reject the normal per se and preach the abnormal, the obsessed, the build the empire, like go big. Can you talk a little bit more about how you guys came to that conclusion and the value in thinking that way?
We really came to that conclusion when our lives came crashing down in 2008. That point I was telling you about, where we did not know, where we were confronted with that we were poor rich people at the time. Certainly I had never had that much money in my life at that time when I was with Grant. I grew up in New Orleans. We were worried about turning off the lights and saving money. And so that was a completely different world for me. So when Grant and I lived in Los Angeles, we had this beautiful home. It was Lionel Richie's old home. Yeah, I did name drop, but I do that because a lot of people in LA know that house. It was this big, massive, sprawling house in the Hollywood Hills that overlooked the whole view. You would think, oh, like we had it made, we were set. But then that economic crash happened, and like everything was threatened to be taken away from us. And it really exposed how vulnerable we were, because we were living this normal life. I was thinking I was in a marriage, but I didn't understand the concept of a partnership. I was just being monogamous, doing my thing, him doing his thing, and existing together. But we almost lost it all. And had I not traded in to get behind him and build up this thing, we wouldn't have survived that. I'm not even sure if the marriage would have survived it, because my attention was only pretty much on myself at that time. I never took him into consideration as highly as I had done myself. I was pretty self-centered. I mean, my whole life, I moved out of my house when I was 17. I took care of myself in Los Angeles, knowing no one, from 17 until I met Grant. So I was very selfish. I had to be, to self-sustain. But that exposed the vulnerableness and the weakness in our relationship and what we had. So at that point is when I realized we need to have something so big that it can survive an economic hit. It can survive a lawsuit. It can survive haters, attackers. It can survive a death in the family, someone getting ill. And the only way you can do that is if you have an empire so big and so abundant in surplus, so abundant in allies. I mean, you need people fighting for you. You need to have a cause so worthy that everybody else in your empire is willing to fight for you, to campaign for you, to not sleep at night, to get you through a hard time. And, that's what it takes to have an empire. And when you build something like that out, it's hard. I mean, it hurts when it hits, but you can take it because, you're world class, you're a champ, you know how to take a hit, you know how to dodge, you know how to, tighten your core and take it, but you get a newbie in the ring and, they can be taken out in a second,
What's the value though in that mindset, and why do you think so many people are attracted to that mindset? You built like a huge number of a following. Why do you think people are so gravitated to that mentality?
I think a lot of people, well, for a couple of reasons. I mean, relationships, if we're going to go down that road, relationships have been destroyed over the last couple of decades, I think, where we've forgotten how to work as a team because we're so focused on ourselves. We don't know how to be a unit with anyone again. So the fact that Grant and I have really kind of discovered this for ourselves and are kind of leading the forefront of, relationships are not always easy. I am not up here saying we have a perfect marriage. We are blissfully in honeymoon love all the time. I'm not going to lie to anybody and pretend that it's perfect, but it's perfect for us. We know how to operate with each other. We know how to support each other. We have trust, even on the days when we don't like each other, you know? And that is attractive to people. People want to be able to have a ride or die. People want to have that person that has their back no matter what. It's not only is it romantic, it's stabilizing, and it helps it helps to stabilize for you to grow your empire and build and protect it. And who doesn't want that? Who doesn't want a true partner in life?
When I announced that you were coming on the podcast, I actually just put it out there and see if I could get some questions from the listeners. And two major questions came up. One, I was debating whether to ask, but I'm going to ask because I want you to be able to talk about it. You know, one of the questions was, Elena is so like sincere, so sweet, so nice. And then there's Grant, who's the abrupt, you know, he's edgy, doesn't always sugarcoat things. How does that dynamic work?
Well, you know, in our relationship, we do divide and conquer, and we have charted out our strengths and weaknesses. So it works very well because I feel like I bring an element of softness to him. That is just who I am. That's the lightness of me. And I help to, you know, as much as I don't want to stymie him, I don't want to control him. I want him to feel free to express himself. However, I do constantly kind of try to smooth around the edges and kind of keep him kind of molded in a way where he can be havable to other people. So it works really well because a lot of women actually have started following him through me, you know, whereas he might not impinge upon women because of the way he's so, what you said, rough or abrasive, but the calmness that is me can have people kind of understand him through my avenue or my channel. I mean, you know, not YouTube channel. I mean,
I also think that, I mean, you're both sincere, right? Just two different approaches. And I think the people who get offended by Grant have some sort of insecurity in themselves where they don't want to hear the truth and they don't want to hear certain things. So I actually think you're both saying the same message, right? Just people who get offended don't like being told straight up that what they're doing is wrong. And I think he's... Oh, that's fine.
Go ahead.
He's coming from a place of helping, and so are you. And if you're both coming from that place of helping, it kind of balances everything out.
Yeah, that's the end goal that we both have. In the end, anyway, is we want to help people. You know, the goal isn't the goal. The trophy, the Super Bowl ring, is the 10 billion. I don't know if you know that, but that's the goal I'm going for. I want to create a $10 billion. But it's not. That's the trophy. That equals to me, though, help. How many people were we able to help in order to achieve that goal? So, you know, when you reach a certain level of what other people could assume is success or wealth, you take it another step further. See, I went from being only by myself and only thinking about myself. Then I started to put Grant and our couple's goals a little bit before mine, but still continuing to nurture mine. And then you hit a certain level where you've got that down, then you want to help other people get there. And that's where we are now. That's why we're going to this global thing. I want to help people. I want to call myself a little person. I hope that doesn't offend anybody. That's just, I feel like I'm not there yet, you know, where the big dogs are. And every time I'm with them, I feel like I'm just a little person. And that's where we want to do. We want to help the little people come up with us. I don't want to be up there with the big dogs alone. I need my people.
So the other question that was asked the most was from ambitious women who sit there and look at you and sit there and say, I'd love to know how she balances growing an empire, yet still being a good spouse, yet still being a mother. And not only a mother, someone who's super present in their kids' lives.
Yeah.
Right? So how do you balance all that?
I just do my life. I just do whatever I'm doing at that moment, 100%. Or I try to. And then I outsource a lot of everything that I gave up having to be a superhero. I think a lot of women, I don't want to speak for them, but it's my perception that a lot of women think they have to do everything. And then that kind of makes them feel guilty if they delegate a nanny to do something or have a housekeeper or this or that. I delegate all that stuff out so that when I am home and I'm with my kids, a nanny might be there, but she might be making dinner while I get to be doing homework or playing with the kids. So, you know, as the empire grows, you have to add more people so that you can show up fully at the roles that you want to do. So I have that in place now where I have the royal court that are there to support me so I can do everything that I want to do.
Do you think you could give some tips to the listeners who are just starting off and want to get to that point of how they could do a better job balancing everything?
You know, call a friend to come help you. Pay somebody $10 an hour to clean your house once a week. But also understand this, there was no social media when we were in our major sacrifice phase. It's hard to believe now because we have financial freedom. You know, my kids will have financial freedom. So it's hard to see now, but understand that when you're starting out, you are not entitled to private jets or Cartier watches or Chanel earrings. I didn't do any of that. Nothing. We didn't go to parties. We didn't go to dinners for like 10 years while we were trying to build this thing. It was uncomfortable. We didn't have the finances to go on a trip or anything. So for someone that's starting out, know that you're in sacrifice phase. It won't have to be there longer. Hopefully we can help fast track you so it doesn't take you as long, but know that you don't have to keep up with the Joneses. You know, work on your integrity, work on your discipline, work on your courage for standing up for what's right, work on keeping your word. Those are the things that are going to get you there faster. You don't need a fancy dress or a Gucci belt to make you be somebody. I would rather you show up in a paper bag and have a good, honest heart than showing up all glitzy and being fake and broke. You know, don't worry about other people. Just worry about building your empire and putting your head down and be willing to make that sacrifice, and it will pay off. It will pay off.
Well said. I think people spend way too much time trying to impress people, and let alone impress people that they don't even like, right? That they don't even care for.
Yeah. Yeah, it's weird, you know. The more money I have, the less I care. I love my nice things. I'm not gonna lie, but the less I care, like if I show up at a party or whatever, I don't care if it's not a Chanel bag or this or that. It doesn't matter to me anymore. When I buy those things now, it's because I like them and I'll use them when I want. It's not like for show.
Love it. You say when you're building an empire, you're going to get attacked. What type of attacks can people expect, and what are some tips on how to defend them?
They're just, I don't want to scare your audience away because the reward.
Well, I think it's important. You want to build an empire.
You're gonna when you grow, and you're gonna have people that if you have employees, they're gonna leave and sue you. They're gonna make claims that you didn't give them a lunch break. They're gonna want money from you. You know, the photographer that you shot it for a magazine sees that you used a picture that the magazine that was in the magazine, and they said you could use the picture, but now the photographer comes to you and he wants to sue you because you used the picture. I mean, it's endless. I mean, it's like almost everybody can come after you for something. And then you just have to eventually, we've never sued anyone in our life. That's not how we make our money. But eventually you just have to, when you grow your empire, You have an onboard lawyer who just handles everything. You're going to have people that want to come in to the office at Christmas time to play a prank on you and scare your employees by running through after you've kicked them out 3 times, dressed in costumes, bullhorning with horrendous signs, scaring your employees. I mean, you're going to have people showing up in the parking lot that refuse to leave, who pull out a pair of cutting scissors this big, like crazies. You're going to have to deal with a lot of stuff that you just didn't foresee. People are going to want to sue you for this, for that, whatever.
I feel like that hurts less than personal attacks.
What's that?
I feel like that type of attacks, people could sit there and say, okay, that's bad. But how do you handle the personal attacks?
You develop a thick skin. You get tough enough to take a hit and strong enough to deliver a blow. And that's where I'm at in my life. And I train all the time so I can mentally and physically be up for the challenge. And people can attack me. I don't care. I mean, I do. I'm very sensitive. I'm not going to lie. But I don't care so much when they attack the stuff, because it's superficial. I know who I am. I know my purpose. I know I'm trying to help people. I know I have a good heart. I know I'm not perfect. I know not everyone's going to love me, especially when I have strong viewpoints on things. But how do I handle it? I recognize that a lot of people, when they attack you, they're saying more about themselves, or they've given up on themselves, or flat out, they don't want to see mankind get better. So, I mean, what am I going to do? Like, go cry in a corner because they insulted me? They try to insult my kids because they probably know that's a bit of a jugular. It's a cheap shot. They'll get me. That'll get me, but it won't keep me down. It might hurt, might stun me, but I'm coming back.
I mean, you live pretty open lives, right, on social media, and you put your kids out there too. So yes, you're going to have people who probably just want a reaction from you, who will go for the low blow, like the kid.
Yeah. But they won't see it. They won't see it. My trainer will. I might cry to him and beg him not to kick me out of the gym.
But how do you brace your kids for that, right? They're coming into the spotlight with you, right?
Yeah. So
how do you brace them for all this?
Well, so far they don't know some of the things that have happened behind the scenes or whatnot. But you know what? They're Team Cardone. They understand what we're doing and that we have a very big purpose as a family, and they're all on board. And I'll cross that bridge when I get there. Right now they're 7 and 9, so I try not to put adult problems on children's. On a child. I try not to put adult problems on a child. So they're shielded a lot of what we go through. They don't understand, they don't know we're under attacks. They don't know we have lawsuits. They don't know, we actually don't have any lawsuits right now. We have pending ones. They're going nowhere. There's no evidence, but they don't know that, they don't know the friends that have traded, have turned coat on us. They don't know, the friends that have betrayed us. They don't know any of that yet.
Well, you also have first of all, I just want to say you've done an incredible job raising them, because I've never met a 7 or 9-year-old that could speak in front of 34,000 people. So it's incredible.
Thank you.
But aside from just the people who turn coats on you, I'm sure now you have people who are just trying to get in your lives because you're out there and you're known and you've made it, right? So how do you handle that?
It really doesn't happen that much, I don't think. Do you, Johnny?
A little bit.
I'm very protective. I'm more protective of Grant than anyone. So how do I handle it? Look, I don't mind when people ask for things. I know I shouldn't say that because it just opens the door. I don't mind when I get the DMs, or I don't even mind when friends ask me for things because why not? I mean, we're friends. If I can exchange with you in any way, that's fine. However, there are certain people that I have to keep away from Grant because they are a distraction and they haven't earned the exchange. Like, Grant gives so much that like, I can't just put him around a bunch of people who just take. I need Grant focused on our big goals that I've been talking about this entire time. So I only put him in front of people that he can exchange with and they can exchange, and he can exchange and they can exchange. And I know that sounds cruel or harsh, but nobody else gets in. I don't let them in. I have all the people around us that kind of guard and protect him on the same page as that. So he doesn't hang out. He doesn't really have friends. He doesn't go do things. He's always working. That's why people call me a gold digger or a slave driver, because I'm always, I always encourage his work. That makes him the happiest anyway. And he just doesn't do a lot of loaf time with other people. So I keep him pretty insulated.
Well, one of the things you talk about in your
sound right, but
no, I get it. And
especially because there are saying too much. There's just people out there that you try to help, and then you do help, and and then they turn coat. You know what I mean? So you have enough of that, and you try not to be jaded, and you try to continue to put yourself out there because you want to be transparent, because you want all the people who were just like you to see what you did, so you can make your decision and get to where you want to be. And look, we figured a lot of things out. If we fail, you're going to see that too, and hopefully you can learn it from it. If we hit our goals and we win, you're going to see that too. However our thing works out, we have the courage to put it out there, all for the purpose of anyone else attaining what we have for yourself.
Did you find that the bigger you guys got, the more, the smaller the circle had to become?
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So on a different topic, in your book, you talk about, how to find your ideal partner, and it's not in the bars or it's not. You want to elaborate on that?
On finding your ideal partner, how I felt you mean with the list?
Yeah. So there's single people listening. How do you find your ideal partner? One of the things you talk about I'll let you talk about it.
Okay. Well, it was ironic because I hung out with these girls and we were going to have this night with these candles. It was kind of, so not my thing. I'm not into girly things like that. But I was like, whatever, I'll just do it. I had nothing better to do. So we go over there and we're to make this list, which I already thought was corny and cheesy because everyone always writes this stupid list and it doesn't mean anything and nobody gets their list anyway. I was a little jaded on that aspect, but I decided to do it anyway this time. So my friend said, be specific. I wrote over 100 items on this list of what I wanted. I thought to myself, well, I never want to be married, and I probably won't ever be married. But if I had this one guy that was all of this, could I be with that guy for the rest of my life? And I was like, So I wrote that guy on my list, which ironically, Grant, is every single item, over 100 items. I just found the list. I have the list at my house. The only two things he wasn't is 6'2" and green eyes. However, in writing the list, what happened to me, the other girls had kind of the attitude of like, we're entitled to this kind of a guy and this is going to come to me and I deserve this kind of an attitude. But what happened to me, it kind of slapped me across the face because I looked at that list and I thought, okay, if this man did exist and he wrote a list of what his perfect mate would look like, and I did it. I wrote a list of what that guy would have on his list. And I checked the items that I had already possessed at the time, but the list, oh my God, there were so many things I was partying. I was going out to clubs all the time. I didn't want a marriage. I didn't want to, but this guy would want a serious girl. He was not going to be a playboy. He'd want marriage. So I was like, oh my God. Like I had to completely start working on myself because I knew if this guy existed, I'd never show up in his world the way I was at that time. So that's when I really started to change the way I operated as a solo.
despite Grant having all those check marks, it still took him a while to get you.
Yeah, you know, ironically, I met him a couple of months after that list. You know, and that's why it's important when you write the list to go back and write down the negotiables versus the non-negotiables, and not to get stuck on 6'2" and green eyes, because I was looking for 6'2" and green eyes. So I missed the whole other package, you know, over the non-negotiable. Like, I don't care like that he's not 6'2" now. I only wanted 6'2" because of a guy I dated never wanted me to wear heels. And I love heels. So I was like, screw it. I need 6'2" so I can wear my heels. But Grant's never been that way. It's never been an issue. That was a moot point. Green eyes, big deal. But anyway, I forgot what we were saying.
Yeah, it took Grant a while to still.
Yeah, so I met him after that list. But like I said, he was businessman. He was short. He was not my type at all. And so the night I met him, I didn't think anything of it. Then he gets my number from the director, because I was on a commercial set in Los Angeles. He calls me. I don't have a good phone call with him. And then another 13 months, he called twice a month, every month, with no return phone call. So then he became friends with my friends, got into my circle. So I started hanging out with him. And I was like, he's not as bad as I thought. He can just hang out with us, you know? And then the more I got to know him, and like, then we started hanging out as friends. I knew he liked me, but he never crossed the line. I never had a guy not try to like cross the line. That was like a first. I was like, wow. And then he just was, then I went through all my stuff where I pulled all my little tricks on him, but like nothing could scare that man away. He was just always there and amused by me. And the tactics that I used would normally anger a guy and I could get rid of him that way. It didn't work for Grant. He kept just showing up and being there without making me wrong, without making me anything. And that became attractive to me. And then I just fell in love with him.
What made you decide to write the book?
Grant. What made me decide to write the book was that I really feel like I've tapped into some things that are so minor. The adjustments are minor. You know, it's like the temperature freezes at 32, not 33. Know what I mean?
Yep.
It's 1 degree. And I feel like when Grant and I found that 1 degree, we were able to catapult ourselves up. And if I wanted to impart that on other people, because it's not major. It's not major changes. It's little things that you can change that make a really big difference. And I want other people to have that. I don't want to go to the top and be alone with those guys that are already there. I've met those guys that are already there. I don't like them. I like our people.
You want to bring everyone with you.
Yeah. The good people. Yeah. The people that, you know, have a little hustle in their muscle, have a good heart, who want to make a difference, who want to improve the world, who, you know, have the courage to think big. That's who I want with me at the top.
We'll end with this. What do you want people to remember about you? Like forget Grant, Elena Cardone, the powerhouse individual. What do you want people to take away from you?
If I can leave a legacy of empire builders, and I encourage people to go out and discover their full potential and deliver that product or service to the marketplace and to the world, to make that contribution, to make it better. Oh, and by the way, she helped me with my relationship too. I would be like, wow, I made a difference. I made a contribution.
Well, Elena, thank you so much for doing this. For the listeners who want to reach out to you, how can they find you? They can find me on all social mediums at Elena Cardone and my YouTube channel, Elena Cardone. I'd love it if you wrote me. I write back on Instagram and YouTube, so I'm pretty active. She does. That's how we got this podcast, by the way. Thank you so. Remember that. Thank you so much. Really appreciate your time. Thank you. You're welcome. Thanks for having me.